Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. This episode is sponsored by GrowX Labs. Quick question. When you're leading a team or growing a business, who helps you think clearly? GrowX Labs offers executive decision support, real-time access to a trusted strategist who helps you navigate tough calls, leadership blind spots, and everything in between. No fluff, no long-term commitment, just fast, honest insight from someone who gets it. If you're a founder or exec and need a sounding board, go to growxlabs.com/mark. That's grwxlabs.com/mark and book a discovery call today. I hate to start this episode with a question, but did you know that you're the secret to your own success? I know that that's the kind of thinking that I've done throughout my life, and when Chanoa and Inez, when her pitch to be on this show came across my inbox, I knew that I had a kindred spirit of some sort on deck. And let me just apologize right off the bat. Chanoa and I talked a little bit beforehand. I am running on fumes here. I've been doing a lot of episodes and working really hard here of late. So I'm going to try to pull myself together through this intro because we have a really great conversation for you today. Chanoa has a really interesting story, and her work is very internal, like just kind of looking into your own truth and figuring out like your own brand. And even like I feel like it kind of to me goes beyond just branding, and that's one of the things that I love about the conversation that's on deck here. Chanoa is an author, and her book, Dream On, focuses on a transitional phase of her life where she had some loss and upheaval, and she created a really great piece of work out of that. Again, also looking internally. And then more recently, she became the messaging and personal brand strategy consultant of her own brand, Magnetize Your Personal Brand. And that is basically her focus. She wants to help you after a combined 15 years of working as a copywriter and then as a copywriter and strategist, and even after writing her wonderful book, Dream On, to help readers change their lives with principles, tools, and techniques that transformed hers after years of struggle. She is here to help us to magnetize our personal brand, and again combining her experience, principles from her book Dream On, and years of working in branding to help clients enrich their lives and attract better opportunities. And I'm going to give Chanoa a chance to say hi because I've been hogging the spotlight. Chanoa, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm good, Mark. That second coffee is kicking in, so I'll be slightly less sluggish, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, now that I'm kicking into the episode and getting into the conversation, it always energizes me. I mean, it never, I shouldn't say it never fails, because not all episodes turn out as good as this one is going to. And I won't talk about those because nobody's ever going to see or hear those. But this show really energizes me, and that's probably way too much honesty here. So let me just transition right into what I usually open up the show with. And before we kind of get into the heart of your journey and where you are now, I usually ask about yesteryear, the formative years. I know that you tried your hand as a Bachelor of Arts, fashion merchandising, and just curious to know if these are things that you were interested in growing up. Like, how did you wind up taking that on as a field of study?
Yeah, that was a windy road to get there. I never thought that I would actually study anything related to the fashion industry, even though I always did love fashion. It was kind of like, I guess you could call it like a part-time job. It was a hobby I loved where I would read fashion magazines and basically, create insights and decide where I wanted to travel someday and what would I change and all these things. But it was really just a very passionate hobby. Um, in a strange series of events, I was actually pre-med and I came out of school and decided I was not going to be in school for 12 years or stay in South Florida for that long. So I took about a year off of school, and I don't remember the moment that I figured out fashion merchandising, but it was surprising because one of my best friends in high school, she told me she wanted to study fashion merchandising, and I asked her, "What's that?" I've never heard of that. And then she ended up not studying that, and then I ended up going back to school for that. So just a kind of funny twist of fate. But for anyone listening who doesn't know what that is, sometimes the degree is called fashion marketing, depending on the school, but it's much broader than marketing. That's why I actually learned copywriting and so many things about, direct marketing, PR, so many different things I learned at school. But it actually goes, it covered everything in the fashion industry except for design. So some people wanted to do design and open their own businesses, so they actually would go back for another degree to learn, the business of fashion. So, I mean, everything from store planning to styling to merchandising, anything under the sun. So, I really did enjoy school a lot, and I'm still in touch with professors who became copywriting clients later on, and it's very interesting. So, I didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated because I didn't want to go to New York, where people tend to go after they study fashion. And the fashion industry was even smaller in Miami at the time, and it was a Great Recession. So I was continuing to work the jobs I was working then. I actually started a business in school with a friend of mine, but we wound it down shortly after I graduated because she just needed to get like a regular job, but it was taking off. And so that first business was representing emerging fashion designers, and we'd bring them to trade shows and get them accounts to get their items sold in stores. And we had a marketing and journalism arm to that business too, and that was completely my domain as well. And it was nice, one of our designers on Project Runway. It was fun, setting up the events, and but it just wasn't the time for that. So when I did get back into fashion, I just kind of stumbled into this new, like, I started hearing about blogging, like, what's blogging? And I always loved to write. So I had a lot of free time outside of my day job. So I would like just start looking for jobs. And I started doing, writing blog posts for luxury real estate companies. Then it was like Miami CBS Local for fashion articles, interviewing local fashion businesses. And then the CEO of the company where I was working, he was going to open a side business and he realized I could write. So he asked me to be a copywriter. So that was actually my first copywriting job, and everything just kind of went from there. It's just a strange evolution of events that seem disjointed, but looking back, it all makes sense.
Yeah, and those are words that I feel like I hear a lot on this show is that when you start off with one root and one passion, it can kind of eventually transition to places that you didn't expect. And I know for me, I was a television major. I had all kinds of dreams of what that would look like working on sets and maybe living in California or New York or et cetera, et cetera. And my internship, even though it was in Pennsylvania, was kind of what I had in mind as far as like being on a set. It was at like a home shopping network, not the home shopping network, but the other one starts with a Q. And
Yeah.
it it really that's kind of what I thought my career was gonna look like. Except once I got my first job and really from that point on, everything that I've done has been behind the scenes and then some. Like you will never see my name in the credits or hear about me unless it's on Mark My Words. And that that is something that a lot of people may not know about working not only in television but a lot of these industries where you just kind of figure, oh, you got a degree in that, you're gonna be on TV, you're gonna be this, you're gonna be that. It doesn't work that way. There are a lot of jobs, some thankless, some not as thankless, that need to be done and need, they need people to do those jobs. And that's just kind of where I wound up. And I feel like, much like you, due to my path, I eventually found my way doing this podcast and have all kinds of ideas of entrepreneurship and other things I might want to do. I never, unlike you, I didn't think about doing anything too entrepreneurial early in my journey, my professional one, until maybe over the past 6, 7 years. So that's really awesome that you started a business in school and it kind of got the wheels going. Because once you get started with entrepreneurship, I feel like that's it. You're just off and running and you're in, especially if you're as passionate as I am. And I know you are super passionate about what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even connect the dots between starting the copywriting business and having that business in school, but that's really it. The seed was planted.
So talk a little bit about your journey from there, because you've been an entrepreneur pretty much out of the gate from school, but then there was also a point in your life where something happened along the way, and I'm just kind of generalizing it because I'll let you tell or not tell the story, but it kind of propelled you into being an author, which has also kind of, to me, led to just you connecting everything, including what you're doing now. And I'd love to kind of hear the story firsthand on how you wound up here today.
Yeah, it did connect everything. So the root of that story, it's not a happy one, but a lot of good came out of the transformation I had after that. So just to go back in time, I was living in Miami and my boyfriend was from Montenegro, and I really loved the culture and everything I learned about the language. So many different things. I was already learning the language slowly and couldn't wait to visit. And when I went to visit, it was really hard for me to come back to Miami because I was just struck with by my experience there. I didn't want to talk about vacation. People saw pictures and videos, and I was just like, I'm sorry, I can't talk about it right now because I just wanted to go. And that's just because, I've always liked South Florida as, I have a lot of friends and family there, but I never wanted to move there. I moved there as a child. And I always thought it was a great place for vacation, which I still do, but I never wanted to live there. So I just knew I would leave. I just didn't know where I would go. So when I went there, it was just such a strong contrast for me. So we made a deal that, because he just changed careers, he had a flexible career. He became a yacht broker, and that would be great for, his brokerage to have a man on the ground in Montenegro and to be there like Croatia. And people, there was very different yachting culture in Europe. People, there's a lot of buyers like to buy yachts from the US because Americans don't spend as much time on their yachts because we take less vacation time as a society. So they're very happy. Can get good deals. He was going to do that, and his team was excited. And then I started this copywriting business, and it was a side gig for that first year. I had a year to prepare to then make that be my full-time business, just because, there are a lot of successful people in Montenegro, but the general salary, it's very different from the US. And also, just like work permits and all that kind of stuff. So we did end up going the next year, and the first day was like really it felt like a dream. I'd spoken with his parents before, but just like video calls. I never got to meet them face to face. It was the first day we got to spend the day together, and everything was just perfect. Then we went to the seacoast, and our friend gave us his condo for the week right on above the water. And I remember feeling like it was the first time in my life up until that point that it felt like I had no problems. Like life was just perfect, and I was just so happy and grateful. But unfortunately, I woke up in the morning, but he did not wake up in the morning, and he
No.
passed away in his sleep from a clot. And it was just, yeah, it really just changed my life. I would say my life was over because there was that life before he passed away, and then there's a life after. So nobody, young people, you don't have that on your mind that your partner might just pass away suddenly. So besides, I can fast forward through the difficult part of grief, obviously, especially in the early days. But after that, it kind of felt like I got to a point where, well, one, I decided to stay in Europe. And then I got to a point where it felt like I'd kind of healed, or so I thought. But I actually had all this unprocessed grief that was working behind the scenes. And I didn't know that. So a couple years after he passed away, I started having food sensitivities. And then I got one food allergy after another. It was like weeks between each, a situation. And I was kind of losing my vitality. I looked different, energy levels. It was a lot. In hindsight, I'm very happy that all those ailments were things that doctors couldn't help me with. It's not like they could just give me a pill and that allergy goes away. So I had to start searching, and I started to realize it had to be something emotional, but I didn't tie it. It was interesting. I never tied it to his passing and the shock of all of that. And I just thought, it was just stress, everyday cumulative stress. And I searched long and read wide and far, and things would help, but nothing really made a big difference. I meditated, I did yoga, I went to Peru on a plant medicine retreat. I tried everything under the sun, and they would help, but it felt like they kept me in survival mode, just like they saved me from having my health deteriorate, basically. And I couldn't understand why. It was just very confusing because my health was perfect before then. And it got to a point where, after living in the Balkans for almost 7 years, I started like having a strong homesick feeling. And so I was thinking about where would I move in the States. I ended up going to LA. And when I got here, it was very interesting because just getting out of my everyday environment and everyday routines, that already broke my identity so much. And so I was suddenly able to eat a lot of foods that I had intolerances for before. And my diet changed, and that brought a lot of vitality back to me. I felt a lot better. And I started noticing like that I had a victim mindset. And it really, came to a head when, a romantic relationship I had, a long-term romantic relationship ended, and then the friend I spent the most time with that during that period of my life was kind of, lamenting about the whole situation and pointing fingers. And then I went to sleep, and I remember the next day I called her and I said, well, you know what? That relationship was exactly like our friendship. You treat me the same way. So I realized I'd had a victim mindset for a long time, even before he passed away. And that kind of cemented that identity for me, and that I'd chosen people in my life who would help me feel like a victim and surrounded myself with people like that. And it was so jarring because I thought, how could somebody spend that much time on personal transformation and not see something so obvious? But once I got past that, and really got rid of any feelings of discomfort, like how could I have not seen this? Everything in my life started changing. And then I realized the self love component. Like I thought I loved myself, but is it loving to surround yourself with people who will treat you in a certain way? Um, everything changed. So I started doing a more advanced form of meditation, and I kind of made it my homework. It was like several hours a day. And I was just like, I'm never going back to just not seeing, big, um, these pivotal dynamics in my life that needed to come to light. And it was interesting. I came home one day and I realized I just felt amazing. And I just realized, oh, I just got out of that cloud of grief. And I couldn't believe how long it took me. My next thought was, I have to write a book because now, now I know how to get there much faster. And I couldn't see what was happening. And it's something that happens to a lot of us. And it doesn't have to be the loss of a loved one. It could be a layoff. It could be, the closure of a business, that we feel like, okay, I'm in a good place now. I feel better. But we've actually just started shrinking our worlds. We made our dreams smaller because we're afraid to lose. And we're telling ourselves we're feeling okay. And we're just kind of stuck in limbo. And that's where I was. It's a dangerous place to be.
Well, I'll tell you what, listening to your story, I first of all, so I'm very sorry for your loss. And I
Thank
have,
you.
I don't know how much my wife would really want me to talk about all of her stuff, but she has been going through a lot of chronic stuff over the past several months. And really for the past decade off and on, we've been dealing with a lot with her health. So I can really kind of like understand some of the things that you learned in, you know, that like short amount of time because I've always been a little bit like internal and really kind of like looking at myself and looking just kind of like the same kind of things I feel like you have learned along the way because I can also tell you that I have learned, especially I think you start when you have like friendships, relationships, whatever they are, where things don't work out or you get treated a certain way. You're gonna learn if you really pay attention. You're gonna learn a lot about how you want to be in the future and how you not only want to treat others, but how you want to be treated. And it takes a lot of self awareness. And I don't know how many people are as self aware as I know I am, and you seem to be on your end. And it takes a lot. I think it just takes a lot of like honesty. Like it's hard, I think, for some people to be that honest with yourself because, well, seeing the truth can be like that's hard. Reality is hard. So to have the ability to kind of like get past that and see what's really going on and trying to transform and trying to evolve and work on yourself I mean, I love that, and that's one of the things I love about your story. It's unfortunate some of the things you had to live through, but I think we all have things that we gotta live through, and we can all make that choice on what to do with what we learn and that information. And I'm so glad that you had decided to take all that and take a deeper look and not only help yourself but try to help others, because I think what your goal is, especially professionally, is not easy to do. Even though I have like a what I consider a really like cool, fun name for my show and branding and all of that, it still is very hard to not only tap into what uh like will help people to identify with you, but it's also hard to just make sure that you're telling your own truth. And that's where awesome people like you can come in and be a help.
Thank you. Yeah, I was not never planning to write that book. I thought I'd write a book one day. And I definitely wasn't planning on going into the world of personal branding, but it all just kind of it led that way. So, shortly after I finished writing my manuscript, it dawned on me like, oh, everyone keeps talking about the importance of having a personal brand. And that's definitely true, especially since so many of us operate online. Um, but it's usually the conversations and programs, they're usually centered on the external uh, considerations, which are certainly important. I went to school for fashion, so I get that. But in addition to, much more important than what your website looks like, what you're wearing, how you communicate is who are you? Because, my definition of a personal brand is the essence of who you are and how that essence is perceived. So this is something I learned the long hard way because I took my business full time when I was in the beginning of grief. So I took a few months off and then it was me building that. So I didn't realize, oh, okay, my confidence that bottomed out, self-worth, all of those things, all the things that just went out the window, like they were never there. I couldn't see like how that was affecting not just, my health, it was also affecting my business. I went everywhere with my computer. I worked, I could not work that many hours a day now as I used to work before. And it took me so much effort to get such little results. And I would attract bad clients and then, it'd take too long to fire them. And I didn't see that I was creating it. Everything that was happening on the inside was happening on the outside. So a lot of business owners have to face that in different degrees and for different reasons along the way. And unfortunately, they usually find out the long, hard way, like I did. And so it's like, they're maybe afraid of being visible for their personal brand and they're relying on referrals. And then those referrals stop and they were never, they were always too intimidated to send outreach emails or to build a personal brand. And now, they don't know what to do. It's panic mode. So there's just so many different things that I think everything that we do is part of our personal development journey, whether we want it to be or not. And the same thing rings true for employees, but they're part of larger teams. So the fact that, as a business owner, even if you have a team, it's your business. So part of you touches all of your business. And so whatever's happening with you, there are going to be ripple effects and it's pretty quick. And I think once people start to realize, like, they look back, they can start to connect the dots and see, oh, okay, so this thing I was avoiding, it was eventually going to come out into my business. So I designed a program that combines my copywriting and messaging expertise to help with the classic parts, the communication, the positioning, the messaging. But I also take my lived experience and personal transformation techniques from my book, Dream On, to help the business owner develop themselves from the inside out, because then they become more memorable. They are showing up as their authentic selves. They're showing up with their purpose, with passion. their values shine through. So yes, it's going to repel some people, but it's going to attract the people that were supposed to see that message, whether they're clients, business partners, even friends, refers, whoever it is. And that really compounds and creates this really sustainable network for a business. And really, it really helps business owners actually as they deal with any kind of challenges in their lives, whether business, professional, personal, because you're so energized and you're so passionate and you've built this entity that's really, your energy is really behind it and you're really in it. You're not just like showing up and going through the motions.
I think I have a personal brand story that I can share that will resonate. And it's a very fresh, recent story, actually. Before we hit record, and we were talking about how groggy we both were coming into this episode, I had told you that I had been working really hard recording a lot of episodes. And when I booked a guest for this show, like I feel like I choose them for a reason. I don't necessarily look for fame or the most popular or the most dynamic or whatever. I just feel like I pick guests who I feel are going to resonate. I have had a great run the past 2 weeks. Certainly not going to name names, but there was one brand that reached out to me to do an episode, a really cool, interesting company. They have a really cool, interesting thing that they're doing. And I was very excited to have them on the show. I had a certain, because when I come into doing this show, it's always to talk about the entrepreneur's journey and to also give the entrepreneur that I have on the show an opportunity, a window to talk about what they're doing today and not just focus on the journey and the story, but also to talk about what they do. And I even like did a pre-call, and maybe this is all being way too honest for an episode. I'm certainly not naming any names or anything. They were actually really amazing people. It wasn't like I, chose somebody who I thought was going to be good and they were like deadbeats or knuckleheads or whatever. Like, they were very well spoken, very smart, but they didn't really like get what my show was about and kind of like just zipped through their story. And even like one of the founders, it's a company with a couple different founders, one of them actually pulled out last minute, and it was just somebody who wasn't even like one of the founders, which I thought we could still make it work. But we had the conversation. It was a good conversation, but the problem was it was just completely off brand for the show. We didn't really, that window of time that we just spent talking about your journey was like completely lost. And I was like just going off of a script. And I kind of like, I got through it. And, it was all pretty pleasant. But when I went back and reviewed it, I was like, even though this is like a decent back and forth conversation, this is not me. This is not a reflection of my show and my brand. And ultimately, I made the choice not to go forward with publishing that episode. And I don't know, I'm being very discreet about, not naming anybody out. They were actually, I appreciated them. They were great to talk to, but ultimately, like, these are some of the decisions that I feel you gotta make sometimes when it comes to like your brand and how you represent yourself. And I take that very seriously. And I know that in that case, even though that conversation was potentially usable, it was just off brand. It was just all about like them and their business and kind of like their agenda. Basically, I know that sounds kind of like negative, but there was like just kind of like an agenda with it. And I was just like, this is not a reflection of Mark My Words. I felt very insecure because it's like, while I try to bring something different to every episode, I don't want anything quite that different where it's like, what is this? This isn't what this is like a departure from what you're doing. Uh,
So like a
I
Trojan horse almost.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like that is a very important and timely lesson in branding and a decision I had to make as far as my own brand. And I never thought that I would ever even talk about that. I rarely ever talk about the ones I don't publish because I can probably count those on one hand. But that's a great example of being aware of what your brand is and who you are and having to make that weighty, unfortunate choice to kind of like preserve yourself and your brand.
Yeah. But you have to do it, right? It's so
Yeah.
funny. So a lot of people will skip that temporary discomfort because then you had to go back and have a conversation that you're not going to be publishing that episode. So that moment of discomfort would be enough for a lot of people to just publish it anyway. And so
Yeah.
those like little moments of undermining themselves and undermining their brands, you know, it's so, and that could have been the first episode somebody listened to on your show, and that could have been the thing that repelled them. Meanwhile, if they'd started listening on a different episode, it would be a very different experience. So, yeah, kudos to you. It's not always comfortable, but it pays off. It really does.
Yeah, I've just done too many episodes and when I hit the stop button and I say my goodbyes to my guests, 99% of the time, I have this like real positive energy about the episode that we just created. And in that case, I was just like, it was bothering me. I mean, I don't name out particular brand. I'm in Florida and I go to visit the mouse very often. And I was there
Ugh.
the day after and it was bothering me while I was there. And I was like, this is like a sign. Like it just kept bothering and bothering me. And I'm like, something? Usually when I do an episode, it feels great. It's a rush. And I just go on. And that's probably what you want when you come on Mark My Words is to have me have that feeling and I don't think about it too much other than publishing and editing and all of that. So that told me a lot that it was just kind of bothering me and
Mhm.
yeah, this it's just that's what you need to do sometimes as a entrepreneur, especially when you have guests, clients, etc. And thankfully for me, I have ChatGPT that kind of like even gave me the right tone for the email because otherwise I would be like, well, this is how it was. And I'm like, no, you don't want to do that. Just be like, hey, it didn't work out. Thanks for trying and see you later. So
Yeah.
at any rate, this is probably way too much honesty here, but I think it fits in with what you're doing, and I would be curious for you to maybe speak on your own behalf about what makes for good branding and what makes for branding that needs improvement, especially within your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example, but everyone's brand varies so much, right? So we can just start like maybe the heart of it, the positioning of the personal brand. Starting there, that's where a lot of people go wrong if we're gonna move past the inner work part. Um, and that's because they usually just look at, who are the most popular people on LinkedIn? Who are the, people making the most money in my industry? What are they doing? And I'm going to do the same thing. And so I don't mean like copying, their actual content, but they're showing up like them. They might even be dressed like them. Their website's going to be designed similarly. Their social media templates, and they're going to try and use the same marketing means. Meanwhile, that's usually that's almost never going to work out. You can get some short-term wins, but it's like wearing somebody else's clothes. It's going to feel awkward and uncomfortable. It's unnatural. And so that's where really people tend to go astray, usually just from that first step. And then there's also messaging. A lot of people, it can be confusing. It's well known among copywriters that it's very hard to write messaging for yourself. So even copywriters usually have someone else look at their messaging because it's just this phenomenon happens where you just can't see the forest for the trees. Meanwhile, for a client, you would have seen that from, miles away. So a lot of people, whether they write their messaging or have somebody else do it for them, or not, it's that tends to be confusing too because they they want so much to explain everything that they're doing, and they want to like kind of scream like I'm the perfect fit, and they kind of just throw the kitchen sink at everyone. Or they might have various businesses going on, and they want to incorporate that in all of their personal branding messaging. And there's nothing wrong with having different, wearing different hats, having different businesses. Like I understand that, but nobody has anything to hold on to. It's kind of just, I was in a meeting with somebody who described, I think the person alluded to about 11 different businesses on a networking call. And I asked, which is fine, they're conglomerates and things, right? But I asked, okay, so, when she was done, I just asked, what's your main business? And she said, they're all my main business. So a lot of people have that where they don't want to kind of kill or quiet their darlings. So they put it all out there. And it's very difficult people can't understand what you do, what you represent, who you are. There's no way that they can gravitate towards your brand. And another thing is just a lot of business owners, they want to do the work, but they're like, but please don't make me come out of my cave. I don't want to show up in the world. And I don't think everyone needs to be a keynote speaker, not by any means, but if you're not willing to show up for your brand in any way, if you're really hiding, that's going to create an issue because, except for like, if somebody owns a, consumer goods company, you can get away with that. Other than that, it's really, you start to become a well-kept secret, which is only good while the business is still coming in. So those are the most common errors I see, but it's especially showing up as somebody else. I see it all the time. And yeah.
Well, you talked a lot about doing the inner work and working on yourself and just seeing all the things that you see in yourself that has really helped you to develop as a person and entrepreneur. Are there any times where you need to kind of like do that same kind of coaching? Is that something you find you do on a regular basis? Is it every meeting? Is it every day? Is it just certain situations? How is that like understanding of like the inner work that you need to do in order to create your own success when you're dealing with
Hmm.
clients and their brand?
You're speaking for me doing that and continuing my inner work.
Yeah, yeah, just because you've learned so much and have been teaching so much just through your your book and just from coming on shows like mine, do you have any points where you're like, okay, this person might need a little extra, like, of my wisdom on
Mm.
looking inward? Is that like a little more clear?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you meant my work because I'm always I'm
Oh
always
yeah,
still doing
no.
that work. It's in every interaction. Yeah, so it's just really about what the business owner is interested in. So there's a self-guided program, and they can take their time and go through that. But people who have more time-intensive concerns, if they know that if they get the course, they're not going to do it. They want to. If they work with somebody, they'll do it. Business owners who have hit a plateau and they realize they've tried everything under the sun and they know it's something internal. These are usually the people who come to work with me one-on-one. But the one-on-one is only 3 months, and then they also have access to the course, so they can continue to work. We never stop evolving, right? But I intentionally made it to only be, the length of a quarter because really we all have what we need inside of us. So I'm just the mirror. I'm helping you see these dynamics and helping you, kind of move the ball to get things rolling. Um, so you can start seeing immediate outcomes right away. But I don't, I was really intentional to not have business owners feel like they need me, that they need to rely on me month by month.
Well, speaking of being a mirror, and I started off the episode with the quote of "You are the secret to your success." What does that mean to you when you say that? Because to me, I think that is something that everybody needs to hear no matter what they're doing or where they are. But especially as an entrepreneur, I think that's a really important message.
Yeah. You know, um, there are obviously like factors outside of our control. There's always going to be some of that happening, but so much of our success or lack thereof starts inside. How are we thinking? How are we treating ourselves? How are we allowing other people to treat us in different interactions and engagements? So it all starts there. And that can sound, that's not meant to be like a shame exercise or like, oh, if I had thought differently all these years, I could have done X, Y, Z. It's really an empowering statement. And it's just like, it's a really nice feeling to realize, oh, if I can just shift these internal dynamics, so much of the friction in my life can start to dissipate. And I can free up this mental and emotional bandwidth to start seeing all these other opportunities that have been around me. And I will be, you know, representing myself with fuller energy, and not when I stop hiding away, I'm going to start meeting all these people that, more and more things they will connect the dots. And it just kind of grows, expands out into just like the universe of you and your world and how it interacts with everyone else's many universes. So, yeah, I really like that statement because I certainly don't, I understand that there's nothing wrong with getting help from somebody. I don't mean to speak negatively of that at all, but I think it's always important that whatever resource somebody is reaching for, whether it's a book or a coaching program or, my program, it's like uh, that's that's never meant to be a replacement for you. You are that source of power in your life. And this is, I really designed my program and my book to help people improve their relationships with themselves so that they can start to see, they can start to interact with in their worlds in ways that benefit them better. But nobody's, if somebody tells you, I have all the answers for you, I would say run.
Well, I'll tell you what, I am really glad that you came on Mark My Words today to spread your wisdom and tell your story because I am a huge believer, probably because of the path that I've taken in my life. I've had a path where I've been very like resourceful, looking inward from pretty young age. So for me to have somebody on the show to not only promote an awesome business that they are doing, but to kind of put that energy out there to talk about, taking a moment to look inward and, look at your own actions and look at how you can impact your own success is one of the many, many things that this show is about. And with all of that being said, I'm going to somehow segue into saying, Chanoa, how can everybody find you? How can they work with you? And you can add anything else that you want to add.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. You can find everything on my website. It's chanoainez.com, chanoainez.com. You can find my book. You can find my program, the self-guided course, and also the application for my one-on-one program, if that's what interests you.
Awesome. Short and sweet. Well, thank you again to Chanoa Inez for being on Mark My Words. And again, I appreciate your time and your energy. And I feel like we both picked up our energy very well as we got into this, thankfully. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for being on Mark My Words.
Thank you, Mark.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. I am your host who has woken up a lot more since the beginning, not stumbling over words anymore. I am Mark Schmidt, and thank you for listening to Mark My Words. I'll see you soon with another episode. Bye for now. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.